Since we weren't needed at the poaching rig crash site again, we had the opportunity, and, more importantly, the time, to take an alternate route back into the colony, via the Great Rift. We held up at the western ridge as we were waiting for our flanking scouts to return. Once they were set and all was secured, we moved across the ridge, which was much narrower, and headed south, once within the valley of the rift, which was also noticeable much narrower, as the eastern ridge was in full view at this ring point. For a moment, I was actually tempted to head north for a bit, to see if we were near the end of the large, perplexing formation, where the weather is mostly terrible and only seems to fluctuate in degrees of not quite as bad, or even worse. We certainly had the resources, as we were currently holding over twice what we would need to carry us through the 5 or 6 spins it would take for the trip back down to the north crosspoint between the overlands and the parted. But that would be exploratory only. There was a practical reason to scan and raise an initial strike back down toward the colony, and if we were suddenly called back, we'd have to abandon whatever we were doing immediately. It seemed more practical to do something productive and also be that much closer just in case we were needed. As much as the rift might show signs of physical diminishment this far north, the weather it hosted had not improved at all. The sky scan on my tracking pad showed overswirls and sky spikes everywhere. I was also certain that there were plenty of crown saws and magma occurrences as well, but since those are magnetic in nature and originate from the ground, our sky scans do see them. But there was plenty to maneuver around with the spikes and swirls as it was. I plotted out a course that followed the more favorable atmospheric conditions, always trying to keep enough distance from the ridge walls to maximize the spread of the pulse swells we were dropping. Endeavor's size allows for heavier drops, so we are able to build higher, and on a larger footprint with each drop than smaller ships are able to carry the equipment for. Of course, the rift is far too wide, even in this narrow stretch, to cover in one drop, but we would be laying out an initial path that could be built upon with another pass of scanning and raising. And, while our course going down right now was a bit meandering, trying to follow the calmer patches of winds and storm activity to better control our speed. Another pass, moving north, would make it easier to begin filling in the gaps, so to speak, as we would be moving against the winds, making a slow, steady forward progress much easier than trying to hold back against the wind, like we were doing now, heading south with the flow of the weather. Things were proceeding without incident for 10 parts or so, gathering first-time video of the surrounding regions beyond the reach of the pulse swells we were dropping. Sometimes our ground trackers can build simulated topography based on regional patterns and the photos and video we are able to take of non-pulsed areas. The only catch there is knowing whether you are looking at an actual relief schematic or just a good guess by machine assistance. We first tried outlining those patches, but we found that we needed to know at a glance, so those sections now present as an entirely different shade. It's been a while since we've dealt with terrain estimators on Endeavor. Rover 17 uses it a lot in their continual building in the parted, so there may even be some improvements to the tech that I'm not yet aware of. All of that would have to be put on hold as soon as Dana, our comms leader, informed me that they were receiving a short-form distress signal. But how was that possible when we were spans away from any part of the moon that had ever been explored, at least as far as we had believed up until now?